Okay. So I think we can start, just to make sure that that we stick to the time. Although I think that it is going to be a generous session in terms of time for what we had in mind. So thank you everyone for joining this this breakout session, Science Communication for Research Data. My name is Timea Byrom. I am a project manager at the Digital Repository of Ireland, but I'm also a PhD student at UCD Dublin. And I'm doing a PhD on science communication in the context of open science. So the topic is very close to my heart. Let's see. Okay, so we have a few housekeeping points, and Stephanie, please feel free to interrupt and let me know if I'm covering all the sort of technical bits, just to make sure that from that side things run smoothly. So the session is being recorded. You have a small little button to expand the screen if you want to see the slides. There's obviously a chat section that I encourage you to use, and we're going to have an open discussion. So it would be great if you would turn on your cameras while we have the open discussion. But the rest of the time, if you want to look at the slides, and because it's being recorded, it would be best if you kept your cameras on off, and also the microphone, just to make sure that there are no echoes or anything like that. So the recordings, I think, are going to be made available to the participants shortly, and then they will be widely distributed as well. So there are a few links, and I've tried to put in the short version of these. So you have a link to the current presentation if you would rather watch it, look at it directly in your browser. We have a collaborative notes document that includes the agenda and the points that are going to be discussed. Then we have a charter document and the group webpage. Stephanie has put in the links in the chat as well for you to access beforehand. So what is the session about? We are hoping to have an open conversation about the group charter, and to try to progress that document, fine-tune and submit. So I'll try to give you a short overview, short and sweet, hopefully, of the previous activities related to this group. I have shared the link to the charter, and we're going to try to go through the various sections of this and discuss what would be improvements and what would be the next steps going forward. So just to give you a quick overview, as I said, there was an initial POF on science communication for research data at the 15th plenary. So that was roughly a year ago. There has been very good discussion, and there are a lot of people that I should be thanking for contributions on this. All of the information and the outcomes of the discussions have been streamlined into the draft charter. On the slide, but also in the minutes documents, you have a few links to the session page for the POF and the collaborative notes if you are interested in seeing what that discussion looked like. Unfortunately, we don't have a recording of it, but the minutes, I think the notes are quite detailed, and it's well, if you're interested, you can see those. So again, there has been a confirmation of interest, and we, based on the discussion, we've highlighted a set of priorities and potential outputs for the group going forward, which is what I would like to actually do with during the session today. So I'm going to try to. Maybe some of you are not familiar with the actual structure of the charters. So The charters are actually the guiding documents for interest groups under the umbrella of the RDA. They're quite generic documents because the interest groups are higher level groups in the sense that they address wider topics. They're not as focused as the working groups, so they don't have a specific work plan and a specific output and deadlines and milestones related to that. Interest groups are more about exploring a topic and potentially driving the setup of a more specific working groups. So in this case, we're looking at an interest group that is, again, quite generic and is looking at a specific topic and hopefully focus that into more tangible outputs that can be taken forward either through working groups or through other means. So the objectives of the groups, of this group would be, well, to raise awareness around science communication and a focus on science communication for research data, which is in line with the RDA agenda. We will try to bring forward things that are related to the current state of practice in science communication, identify gaps and requirements, shed some light on the actors and stakeholders involved, and understand the incentives and the drivers. All of this, and that's a recent addition, while we consider the context of open science. So just that would be in generic, like overall the aim of this group. Now my next items regard actually the specific topics that the group would be addressing and some of the potential outputs. But before going into that, I would like to see if you have thoughts regarding the objectives and the aim of the group. Are there things that this sort of short overview is missing? Are there things that we should be adding to this? Just to go back to what I was saying before. So if we feel that there are any elements missing to this overarching aim of the group, please let me know now. If not, we can move on to the conversation about the actual topics and potential outputs, and then maybe come back to the discussion about the objectives. How does that sound? Okay. So I'll try to move forward then to the actual topics. So in that conversation during the BOF, we have tried to identify a set of topics and priorities that the group can look at. Things like professionalizing science communication for research data and how that connects to skills, incentives and reward system, best practices, tools and resources for science communication for research data. Of course, the trustworthiness in science communication, which is such a hot topic at the moment, considering our context. Science communication and the data life cycle. How does that fit into it? And defining the stakeholders and audiences. Now, my hope is that we can have an open conversation about things that need to be added to the list of priorities, or maybe things that need to be removed. I do have a Mentimeter that will kindly ask you to rank these topics, but beforehand, perhaps we can just look at this and try to understand what would be the top priorities and if there are any topics missing. So from the point of view of professionalizing science communication for research data and skills, the conversation very much relates to also how maybe data stewardship is being addressed under the RDA umbrella, and if that can be potentially a model because there are similar challenges. The roles inside of organizations are not clear, who is doing science communication, and sometimes that is expected of researchers without the clear training and set of competences that have been defined and are officially acknowledged. That connects very closely to the incentives and the reward systems. A lot of the people present at the BOF also highlighted that there aren't any good references for best practices and tools and resources for science communication, especially in the case of research data. There's also the trustworthiness in science communication that is, as I mentioned, quite a hot topic, especially considering the pandemic and what that has that sort of highlighted in terms of science communication and in terms of understanding what the messages should be and how those need to be formulated to reach the public. Data life cycle and science communication, that is, I think, a topic that is very close to the work of the RDA, and also understanding the stakeholders and the audiences that we're talking to. I distinctly remember a note made during the BOF that, especially in the case of research data, we need to clarify who are we actually talking to, because understanding raw data requires a quite specific set of skills. So there isn't actually science communication for research data that is addressed to the wider topic, but obviously it is interesting for data journalists who act as mediators, and that can be a new dynamic that needs to be considered, especially well now with the focus on research data as a key output. Are there any additional topics or topics that we should be adding to the list? It would be, so please feel free to turn on your camera and your microphone. I would very much like to see like to understand if these this set of priorities should be included in our draft, in our charter, and should these be the outline for the work of the group going forward. I don't know.
It's Leslie. I'll show my picture in a moment. I'm just getting up and having tea, so give me.
No worries.
I think this list personally is fantastic to start with, and nothing else is coming to mind about these. What's coming to mind is needing to differentiate whether you're talking to the researcher to help them communicate out, or whether you're talking to a journalist to help them communicate from science to the wider audience. So really, you briefly touched on it, but I almost think it's for every single one of these points.
Yes, I fully agree with that, and that would absolutely come also out of the well, the potential outputs that are considered in connection to these topics. I'm adding your point to the minutes as well.
And I can do that in a second, so you don't have to talk and type. Just give me just a second to do that.
Okay. Anyone else? Any things that we should be considering? I do like. So one of the things that we should be considering in the charter would be the collaboration across RDA, so with other groups. And I know that there is a specific group looking into data stewardship, and they have a very useful cookbook that is connected to data stewardship. And I think that their approach in professionalizing data stewardship is a very good one, and it would be one of the areas that we could be considering in terms of collaboration. I know that the CoData group also on the summer schools has provided very good training across different topics related to research data. So that can also be one of the means that we can leverage the RDA mechanisms. Are there any other groups, anything, other connections that that potentially people have in mind? Things that we should be considering? Or maybe you'd like to drill down on one of these, on any of the topics, if there's a specific area that.
Yeah, that's weird.
Oh, we can see you.
I just know how hard it is to give a presentation, and you be the only one. But I'm sorry, the lighting's not great. The other thing is the work that we did with the International Network of Networks, I think would be good, because it's not only communication here, but across different countries and different cultures. And so there's going to be different types of accessibilities. But again, like you're talking about with the summer school, it would be leveraging the work that's already done rather than redoing it.
Yeah. I think we have also in the section, yep. No, actually, I haven't put that in the minutes, but there is in the charter. So I will make a note to consider that additional group as well. Any other thoughts on the topic?
I won't join with video, but maybe you can hear me. So I really like the point that Leslie made earlier about thinking about who we're talking about, researchers or data journalists. And your point, Leslie, I think was that each of these different priorities could apply to both groups of people. But I think it's interesting to think about the first one just a little bit more. That's kind of where my brain stopped, because obviously data journalists are a little bit, they have their own type of profession, right? They already have this kind of code and these practices. And also regarding for working with data that's coming from research. So I think that could be interesting to also investigate, maybe to learn from also that group, to see more what data journalists are doing and thinking about how that might apply to research. And then the other point I was thinking is that those two groups are probably not exclusive. They're probably not mutually exclusive. So even though when we're thinking down this list of priorities here about these different perspectives, there's probably going to be some overlap between how researchers are communicating to different publics about their data, and between how data journalists are communicating about researchers' data. So I think that's just interesting to think about where those overlaps also might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a note on that, there's been a recent conversation about how in the context of open science, I'm hoping that I got a note that I have some connection issues. Okay, I still can see you move, Leslie, so that's good. Okay, so I was saying that there's an ongoing discussion how in the context of open science, actually the sort of boundaries between what's expected of a researcher in terms of dissemination and communication, and what the science communicators and science journalists are doing are sort of blurring, in a sense that roles are not very clear, and there aren't any organizational structures that support this. But I'm thinking that also in terms of the motivation that drives to good science communication, this is very different. So journalists and communicators are focusing on informing, and maybe also the enjoyment aspect of science, while researchers are commonly driven by the need of disseminating their work, and also getting cited for those things. So that's a key incentive that often is. Is that a full list, or is that a Good coverage. What other drivers and incentives do we see?
I was wondering, this is Stephanie, I was wondering if
yes.
We've looked at any of the Science Gateways training, the NSF funded projects. And the other one is Lou Widley's group that's funded by Sloan, which is the Center for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement. And their next charter, their next funding round is about champions, you know, or nonprofit organization champions, and training them. These are training researchers on how to disseminate their outputs, exactly what they're going to be focusing on. And then the third is leveraging off what was just talked about, what Leslie was talking about, you know, who's the stakeholders, who is the audience, because it would be a kind of different priorities possibly. And certainly Steven Pinker's work at Harvard, the Department of Psychology, is really great about, you know, common language, learning how to communicate science in a for someone like me who's not a scientist, so dumbing it down a little bit or making it more understandable. And Steve, Dr. He's got a lot of great, I saw a couple of his presentations and they were really good. So maybe adding some of those resources into our work here.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stephanie.
One other thing I just want to point out, again, I'm not sure it goes with the area of focus, but social media. I mean, it just has to be addressed on what happens when something is, say, overhyped, you know, and it gets out of control of what the researcher wanted. The example I can think is an article that came, a preprint that came out a year ago on ABO blood type. And the poor researchers, I mean, just were slammed. And I looked at it and really, okay, it needed to be improved some, but it never got published. And a year later, we're seeing more about ABO blood type, and they weren't wrong, but they didn't, you know, they had to deal with a social media impact that just, and it was scientists as well that went after that paper. And there were some flaws to it, like there are. Anyway, I think we have to deal with that kind of over communication and how to address that as well.
Yes, I'm absolutely, because it's one of those tools that often gets listed whenever researchers are provided guidance on how to do proper science communication. Social media comes always up, but it doesn't come with instructions. So that would be obviously one area of the tools and best practices and the resources that that should be absolutely addressed for various reasons, as you mentioned. So the issue of the hype, or also other aspects that that social media, which is such a complex topic, might bring forward. Anything else? Sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, the other thing that I'm thinking about here is the role that data visualizations play in communicating science and communicating research data. And I know that there's research going on in this field in different groups. I know in the UK and some groups in Vienna. But I think that's also interesting to think about here for us if we're thinking about best practices in communicating data. And we think about how people are consuming data. Often it's through a visualization or a graph or a chart. So I think that could somehow be worked into this list. And that also ties in with the idea of data literacy, which I think has been touched on a little bit here. I think you mentioned it a little bit to me earlier, thinking about how people are understanding and making sense of what they see in these different types of communications. So I don't know if that's missing from the list, if it's kind of in there somewhere, but yeah.
I'm just trying to add at the same time also some points to the mentee. So addressing social media with, and also data visualization. That's also particularly relevant for the relationship with data journalists. I think that that's a common language that is very important, I'd say, and we should be absolutely looking into that. I think it's one of the underestimated channels and one of the important connections that and important mediators that can facilitate, especially when we're talking about communicating to the wider audience or even to the policymakers that need good data, need to visualize properly the data in order to make good decisions. And the other topics that yeah, and also to the scientists themselves. That's very true, Kathleen. Okay, so I think we've covered the topics. I'll try to move on now to the bit on the potential outputs, and then we'll try to run the Menti. Oh, sorry. No, back. Okay. So we've looked, as I mentioned, we've looked at the priority topics, and based on the sort of the way the groups work under RDA, especially the interest groups, we usually have a set of priority topics that are being addressed and potential outputs that the group can look at. So in addressing the priorities or the topics that we discussed during the BOF, we've also tried to translate those into specific outputs or things that the group can work on in order to address these gaps or the things that will come out of the wider discussion around the topics. So one suggestion was to have a toolkit that would address or would provide would be a useful resource for the practice of science communication and science communication for research data. Then a set of guidelines for trustworthy science communication, a curriculum for skills development, also use cases and best practices, and specific practitioner and user scenario catalog that can be leveraged by researchers or whatever specific audience we are thinking about, considering well, Leslie's comment earlier. Or we can survey the community for feedback on what are the stakeholders, the motivations, the incentives, and the various roles that are involved in good science communication practices. Now, are there any other sort of types of outputs that we should be looking at? I know these are very generic, and considering the sort of progression of the group, once topics are prioritized and identified, then there's going to be a little bit more clarity about the outputs. But I think that this is one side of the coin that is very important, and we should be trying to well, structure the work, because it's a volunteer group. So we should be thinking about structuring the work also in very practical terms. So thinking about things that we can do, and outputs that would be useful for the community. So again, are there things that you see in this list that should be maybe prioritized, or things that are missing? I think going back a little bit to the question of the language, possibly an ontology or a vocabulary that could be focused on terms of related to science communication might be a useful resource, because I think that there isn't one around that is that easy to use. Don't know. Any other thoughts?
I'll buy it just because I feel for you. And I think we might be having a bigger discussion if we were in person. So someone else please chime in. My favorite to start with are use cases. I think this is a great list. The question is, it's a robust list. So how do you get things done, right? What do we focus on?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wish we had this in a poll so we could see what other people think, you know.
Okay. So I can actually, I'm happy to run the Menti. Let me just see if I can upload it. So if you can go to menti.com, and that should be the code. Let me see if I can move to the actual poll. Wait, I can't go back, but do let me know if you can access the question. I'll try to do it myself. So you should go to menti.com, and the code is 3836. Let me see if I can do it.
It's working for me, and somebody else in the chat said it's working for them. So I think we're good.
. Okay, so data visualization is at the moment in terms of the priorities. Oh, yeah, already moved very quickly. So professionalizing science communication, best practices, tools, and resources. It's a very wide, obviously a very wide topic. Trustworthiness, defining the stakeholders. It looks like incentives and rewards and the connection of science communication and the data life cycle are not that that much of a priority at the moment. So we have, I think, roughly 9 answers so far, 12. Things are changing quite quickly, which is very good. Best practices, tools, and resources, and professionalizing science communication is still at the top. I will try to keep this. I'd like to keep the poll open for a longer period. So this will be shared in the minutes, and I will also make sure that it's on the session page. So. Professionalizing trustworthiness and best practices. I will leave this this open for a little while. Incentives and the reward system is at the bottom. Addressing social media issues is the 6th in terms of priorities. Okay, I'll try to move to the next one about regarding the potential outputs. Let's see if it wants to move to the next one. So in terms of the outputs, this is also the list that you have seen before. So collecting use cases and best practices, a wider survey to collect feedback to better understand the state of practice, a toolkit with the resources that we've mentioned, the curriculum that can also be complemented with other work with other groups from the RDA, guidelines on trustworthy science communication, and others. So I see that this is not super friendly, but let's see. It is not moving for me. Let's. I don't know if it's a connection problem because I see. Can you still see my screen? Seems like Menti has. I see.
We can see your screen, but we can't see the responses like we did on the last one. Yeah.
I see the same. Let me just try to reload. Let's see if that helps. Because I saw in the corner that there are 13 answers, but oh, there you go. Perfect. Sometimes I refresh. So the toolkit seems to be the first option. Follow the guidelines. Very important considering collect use case, and again, this can be work that can be done connected to the work of other groups on their RDA. Then a wider survey that would also be useful. I always think of a quote. I think it's Van Gogh, but they were talking about science communication and the fact that there are two trends that are dominant. So two topics that people all agree on, that science communication is important and it's not well done. So yeah, survey and collecting additional information on this would be very useful, just to understand what the practices are and well, what are the incentives and the drivers that people have to do the work. Okay. I see the toolkit is at the top. There are 16 answers. Guidelines are next, and collecting use cases and best practices. Okay, I see that there's also an answer to others, so I'm very curious. Please feel free to speak if there are points that are missing to the, or other potential outputs that we might be able to look at, which would be of interest to address the topics we prioritized. So I see Kathleen says the survey could arguably come before a use case activity survey in order to identify practices and use cases. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. She's making the suggestion to add to the chats or to the notes if you have any suggestions under the other category. Okay, so this can be moved to the charter. So the answers that you have provided to the Menti, we can move them and have them in the charter work, just to ensure that that this is translated. So the next topic on the in setting up the, let me just try to move to the full screen. Should work. So the next topic, the next section of the charter regards participation, and I think that this goes back a little bit to your point earlier, Leslie, about who we are talking to and what would be a good sort of audience that the group might be looking to add, and also hopefully get participation from. So there's two sides to that. So we are looking at researchers, scholars, scientists, data technologists, and data practitioners. These are common membership of the RDA. Then we have research support staff members who are quite often sort of delegated the task of supporting dissemination, and they do support the work of the researchers on that. Then we have the category of science journalists and communicators and policymakers. Are there, in your opinion, other groups that we should be looking at that need to be incorporated? Are there other stakeholders that the group should be speaking to? Yes, citizen science, Jessica. Do you wanna add anything to that? Plus one, Stephanie. Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the context of open science, citizen scientists are a category that that not only acts as a mediator, it's also an audience and a communicator for science communication. Other groups. General public, absolutely. Yes, it's also about the yeah, we might not be able to. So the best way would probably be to divide this list into people that we are talking to. Not we got it. Thank you, Stephanie. Groups that we are talking to, or groups that that we should have we need to get involved into the conversation. So funders, academic institutions, leaders, communicators. Yeah, absolutely. Representatives of organizations as well, since dissemination of, especially in the case of the research performing organizations, we should be looking at engaging at institutional level, because they do play an important role through their policies regarding open access, regarding dissemination and exploitation. So that's another audience as well. Do you want to add anything to that, Leslie, to the funders and academic institutions? Any?
Yeah, I'll actually give you video too again.
You can please stay on it. Would be
okay.
I encourage everyone else to turn on the cameras. The conversation should be open to everyone.
So for funders, I think we need to be speaking with them, because it'll be important to fund this effort. I mean, let's be clear about it. But the other thing is they care about what they fund and the reach of that, right? So it would seem like they would be a vested stakeholder in science communication and the trust in science communication. And when I say funder, I think there's different types, right? There's the government funders. There's also the NGO types. Sloan was mentioned earlier, but there's the Wellcome Trust, the Gates Foundation, those types of foundations that support this type of effort. And I think one of the beauties about RDA is all right, there is an interest group tomorrow, or a working group with funders talking with publishers. That would be a good place, because RDA brings those disparate groups together, the publishers who care about their information getting out, and then of course what you mentioned about academic institutions. And I will put this in the note to me, and don't worry about it, but it just made me also think about the difference between preprints and published science and data, and understanding, I'm just pontificating at this point, but understanding the trust of that, and that being a critical part, sort of the stage of the research presentation, the data presentation, not just what type of data it is, but where is it in the cycle that we should be looking at, which is totally off topic. So my apology, or it's on topic from a while ago. So
no, I mean, all the bits and pieces are connected. So and the more connections we can sort of establish, you can build up on diverse work that comes out of RDA or other work that is available out there. So any connection is more than useful. Okay, thank you for that. I see, Jessica, you've added a point in the chat. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure, I can put on my screen too. Yeah, no, I was just tend to think in terms of disciplines, because I'm part of the discipline-specific advice for DMP's working group, and just thinking of like certain communities within certain types of research also have specific needs. As a follow-on to what Stephanie was saying about involving the community, well, what communities, right? So there are certain communities that have certain needs and interests that differ from other communities. But I don't know, that might be making things harder as well, because how do you address all the possible communities? So, yeah, what Stephanie says about Indigenous data and sovereignty, because
yeah. Absolutely, and the type of data that is available also, and the level of sort of interest that can come out of it is different.
But also even in terms of communication, like a discussion we're having in the Netherlands in terms of metadata descriptions that we got into was making sure we were accurately describing gender. And so in terms of communication, making sure that we're using good word choices yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The discipline, be disciplined in your vocabulary, no?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a challenge. And obviously the disciplinary aspects make things complicated, but also more fun. Okay. Any other groups that we might be missing? This is also useful because the charter will, yeah, we'll put that in Venkat. So the charter will be used, will be opened up for public consultation. So the more we manage to highlight the importance of this work to the various categories, the better it will be. It will be to get their feedback about how meaningful this work is, and maybe on directions that we should be considering. There's obviously also the geographical specificities layer that needs to be added to the conversation. So
Tamia, one thing that was put in the chat was the Indigenous Data Sovereignty Group.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jessica mentioned that, but I don't know if if anyone else would like to speak to that. Do we feel that needs to be a yes? Absolutely, Hillary. Yeah, the geographical comes with multilingual. Do you want to say anything on that, or we'll make sure that it's recorded in minutes?
Yeah. Well, just because like the multilingual aspect, like I mentioned, hi Leslie, it's lovely to see you in the dark there. The multilingual aspect, I mentioned it yesterday, and it's becoming, more and more sort of, there's a lot of interest, which is great. And actually, I don't think I explained it well, but something that Leslie kicked off in her time as the director in the US was the connection, with the Latin America. And we are about to sign an MOU, which will look like a lot of translation time for the locals in Spanish and things like that, which is really good. So I'm just thinking that this could be something we would highlight to them. And as you know, Francoise spends a lot of time with her colleagues doing stuff in French. And I suppose that the communication part of things, the language is really important too. So if we could also bring that multilingual aspect in, I think that would be very helpful. Yeah. And then try and ask the community to support that piece of it,
Absolutely, and I'm thinking that together with the languages, there's also the dimension of the inclusiveness and accessibility that is so close to some of the work that is being done under RDA. So I think it's an important dimension that needs to be considered. Stephanie, I see you. Did you want to add anything to that?
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. I fully support what Hillary just said about the regions. And I think we want to be careful to ask what's needed instead of U.S. or Europe coming in and telling them how to do it. So we're doing a webinar right now in conversations with a group from Colombia, and they're identifying what types of RDA outputs and working group things they need in their area, but they also want to communicate back what they're doing, what's happening down there. So we want to be definitely getting people from different regions involved in this group so we know what's needed in those areas.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie. Venkat, I see you. It's the A in fair. Do you want to add anything to that? That's one way of making us a short connection.
No, I completely agree. And coming from the CoData RDA schools as well, we've experimented with this. You might know that we did an instance of some training in Costa Rica, and something that we had never really tried before was real-time translations, and that actually worked quite well. And also, that was both in a live setting and over Zoom. And in Zoom, I didn't realize until that point that you can have different channels. So you can have different languages on different channels. And it worked out really well. But of course, that's in real time. But of course, there are other ways of translating for pre-recorded sessions or, PowerPoint presentations, whatever, they can be translated as well.
So actually then multilingual and the multitude of languages and ways of going about that should be one of the priority topics, it seems. You joined a little bit later, Venkat. We were looking at the priorities and the topics that we should be addressing. That's what I
right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, I joined at midday. Yeah.
But that's very useful input. Other aspects that that maybe should be considered around participation and inclusiveness and inclusivity and the distinctions. Okay, thank you for all that input. We'll try to move that into the actual draft, and I'll make sure that I share again with you following the meeting the link to the draft where you can provide additional input. The way this usually works is that this is then passed on once there's a sort of a consistent draft. This gets passed on to the tab who will perform a review of the draft and will provide advice on things that we should be improving, and then it will get passed on to the council. I see someone mentions cultural context. Yes. Do you want to speak to that?
If possible, yes.
Of course.
No, I think it's Jörg is my name. I'm from Germany and I'm from the biobanking field. What I experience is that the understanding of terms and of issues is very strongly dependent on particularly cultural or mainly cultural context. So terms are differently understood or receive different attention. Yeah? And I think this is really an issue also in the science communication, because you will talk about something and something from different cultural context will understand it in a different way or put it in a different frame. Yeah. issue to communication as well?
Yes. I had a little bit of trouble understanding, but yeah, absolutely. If I got the main idea, well, the cultural context is yeah, it finds its way in the communication that is being performed, and it's an important, a key component that obviously makes communication, adds a requirement, an additional requirement to how the communication is tailored and how the different audiences are approached. Okay. If you can also add that to the shared minutes, that would be very, very good. Yes, thank you, Stephanie. I was just mentioning that. Okay. So I do have another mentee, but this was more oriented about starting from the perspective of the participation to the group and the people who are here with us today. So I'll try to run that just to understand a little bit who's in the audience, so who's with us. And well, the views that we have collected about the topics, whether those reflect a specific category of stakeholders, a specific discipline, and just to try to map that and understand a little bit better what's the percentage and what's the constitution of the people who are here with us today. I don't really know. Stephanie, do you have a number of? I mean, I can see the list, but I'm not sure how many. But let's try. I will run the Menti. Let's see. So again, it's the same Menti as previously. Let me see if I can go. So just to see. I have, let me see if I can reload this. So to some extent, the session can also be a slight test, just to understand who are the people that are here with us and what who are interested in the topic. So are you researchers, research support staff, data technologists? There are some other options: funders, policymakers, research support staff, journalists, and science communicators. So all the categories that we sort of listed before for the participation. So I see that a lot of you are research support staff. And again, I think that that's one of the categories that are heavily involved in science communication, but they're not acknowledged in that role. So that is also one of the dimensions of professionalizing science communication, because it seems to be a task that is divided across various groups, and the responsibilities are not very clearly determined. So there's others as well, so that's good. A data practitioner as well. Most are research support staff and researchers or scientists. Okay, now if we look also at the disciplines, we were curious to understand what's your discipline, and this goes back to Jessica's point actually. So just to see if your answers, how those connect and how we can look at them based on the disciplinary field. So the options are actually the one with me. So No, I think this it's limited to one, but I'm not 100% sure. Kathleen. So the categories that we're using come from the Frascati classification, except for the domain agnostic. That's not included in the Frascati one, but it would be interesting to understand. Obviously, there are many disciplines under the umbrella of these, but so we see social sciences and natural sciences are mostly at the same level. We have someone from engineering and technology, people from medical and health sciences. Domain agnostic might have been, should probably also be cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary, because that's, I don't think anyone is completely domain agnostic, in the sense that work most likely covers different areas. So thank you very much for that. I think that's very useful information. We'll put that also in the minutes. I'll make sure I'll include screenshots from the poll just for everyone's reference in the minutes as well. Okay, now are there other ways that, and this is Kathleen, probably one of the ways that you can highlight multidisciplinarity. So are there other ways that you refer to your role and your in your domain? Because we know that it's very difficult to fit in one category, and I'm not sure we want to, but yeah, just for the sake of having specific categorized data, we use categories. But please do add here any other ways that you refer to the work that you're doing, so to the role and your discipline. I'm curious if there are any other ways that you speak about your work that are particularly relevant in this context. I do not see. I'm not sure if the problem is again about reloading, but I will keep this open. For another minute. Okay. I see there are no other ways that people refer to their jobs or their domains, so I'll leave that that for now. Okay, going back to our agenda. So the last point that that I wanted us to cover in this meeting would regard the next steps. And that means understanding participation and co-chairs. So in order for the group to actually be, well, to be running, we would have to understand what would be a feasible agenda and a way of working, because everyone's a volunteer. So that means that we have to be realistic and try to outline maybe a plan for the upcoming months. So regarding the submission of the draft, and also to understand what would be a reasonable mechanism for the group to meet. Would monthly calls be a good option? Are people open to that? Is that feasible? Is that realistic? Maybe monthly calls in between the plenaries would allow us to sort of narrow down a little bit better the topic, and have for the next plenary a plan of action to be discussed, clarified. So I think that it would be good to understand how people feel about that. Is that feasible? And also we need co-chairs. So I'm obviously up to be one of the co-chairs, but we are looking for other people. And one of the guidelines of the group setup is that it would be good to obviously have good geographical coverage, I think also domain coverage, but I'm not 100% sure. But we can start with the geographical coverage. So if there would be possible for other people, if there are other people on the call who are interested from other regions to join us as co-chairs, that would be really good. I think it's one of the requirements, obviously, for submitting the proposal. Now, the group has already a web page, and I've put in the link in there, and I think it's also in the minutes. So we have a working space on the RDA website and the mailing list. So it would be good if people are interested in signing up to contribute to the group, to contribute or be observers of the group. That's perfectly fine as well. To sign up to the mailing list, because that's going to be the main channel of communication with the ones interested. So then the next steps would obviously be to follow up after this call to fine tune based on the input that you have provided, the various sections of the charter, and submit that and follow the endorsement process. So in a nutshell, that would be the next steps, but I'm open for suggestions. I encourage any volunteer for co-chairing roles as well to get in touch. It would be really good, I think. Okay, there's
if I'm back on again or not. Tamea?
Yes.
I don't know if all the people in the room know. Does everyone know what being a co-chair would involve? Would that be helpful for them to understand that? Or put them off? I know it's not that often.
Well, I think I'd have a little bit of a problem defining specifically what they do. So the co-chairs are the sort of people who both drive and do the admin of the of the group work. So how many co-chairs? As many as possible, Venkat.
Well, there is a policy which we also need to try and cover, which is about geographical. So you can have as many, and the more I think there are, the lighter the workload, if you can agree amongst yourselves. Yeah. But we do need a bit of a geographical balance. Yes. It couldn't all be from Europe. And
sure. You volunteered as a co-chair from life sciences, so yeah, that would be very good to sort of balance it also from the disciplinary. Are you from Europe?
Sorry. Yes. Is this a disadvantage?
Not at all.
I would love to move to the Caribbean, but
wouldn't we all?
Yeah. So thank you for volunteering. That's very good. We are open to other. Obviously, like the amount of workload that you would be taken on is your sort of call. So if you can I don't know, identify a category of work that you would like to follow as a co-chair, that's perfectly fine as well. We'll try to make sure that everything is covered. So we do understand that it's a voluntary work, and people don't have a lot of time. And
if I can chime in here too, in case there's somebody who's watching and listening but not saying anything, that's perhaps from another region, reach out to Tamea and do it offline is fine as well. One of the benefits of being a co-chair, and one of the nice things of RDA, is it does need to be international. And the second thing is, when you're a co-chair, you get to have a voice and in where things are going and what's happening with research data, and it's a nice opportunity. And so even if I would say that you're uncertain, reach out. And even if you're not sure what you're going to do, reach out. And Tamea is fantastic to work with. I'll just, say that and give her a plus 100 on that one. So anyway, the other thing I would say to Mia is let's circulate this around, because this was very early on these, you know, the North and South American continents. So maybe we could get a little bit more support for perhaps for people who watch this or who weren't up for it.
Absolutely. And we do have also a repeat session that is on Friday at 7 UTC, I hope. I'm getting the time correct. So that means that it should be accessible to a wider audience that is not available, obviously, at this time. So you can obviously join that session as well, but we were hoping that a repeat session would ensure that other people who could not join today would have access to this and can chime in. So, oh, please, Venkadan, you're now. Please don't withdraw.
Stephanie's right. There's no rule. The more, the merrier. You know.
Yeah. So both of you can join. It's that would be actually very, very good, because I think you come from. Oh no, I think you might be coming from the same disciplinary area, but different countries. So that's okay. The more, the merrier, as Hilary says. Okay. Yes, Stephanie, thank you very much. She says there's no rule preventing both of you to be co-chairs, so I welcome both of you. Okay. Any other questions regarding the next steps and how the group might work? So if people have any questions that would well, they would help in sort of organizing the work and you making a decision about whether joining and contributing to the draft charter, that would also be very, very useful. So again, there's the group working space where we would be and the mailing list where we would be posting well, the communication about potential meetings that the group might have and developments regarding the charter. So as Leslie said, if you are a silent observer, that would also be a good place to start and follow. Sign up for the mailing list. There's no commitment in terms of effort, because again, we understand what it means to contribute to this as a volunteer. So it would be a good place to start. So the link to the draft charter is in the slides, but it's also in the minutes. And I'll also put in, I think my email is available on Juno. So if you want to get in touch, that would be one of the ways. So via email. But I put it also in the minutes, just in case you might have questions about becoming a co-chair, and that a conversation would help on that. Okay. This was, I think this has been a very useful conversation and very productive in terms of things that need to be added to the charter. So that's very much it's very much appreciated. So if nothing else, I don't know. Do you have any other questions? Anything? Okay, thank you, Kathleen. That's very good. I appreciate that. Okay. I think we can close the meeting if there's nothing else. We're slightly ahead of time, so.
Yeah, just that quick question about Stephanie says, does everyone know how to join a group? So you just log into the website and go to the group and then click join. Yeah.
Let me see if I can actually do that.
Yeah.
So this is the thanks Hilary for the suggestion.
Well, it's Stephanie, in fairness.
So this is the group landing page, and I can't. I'm already part of the. But you should be able to see a nice button to join. So I think it's available from the landing page, and if not,
yeah, it would have been on the right where that text, right, kind of where your cursor is up there, where that text is, because I just joined and that's where it was. So that's where people need to look.
So you should be able to see the join group button. This is the current list of members. So your name would be listed here. There are posts on the group, and that's where we would be seeing any communication. Thank you for that.
Yes, definitely showing it there. Join group. Okay. The green button.
Thank you. So let me. Okay, there you go. So, thank you everyone for joining. This has been, I think, a very constructive conversation. Thank you, Leslie, and everyone else who has contributed to the conversation. It's sometimes very difficult to get the ball rolling, so I appreciate the input. Hopefully, we will have a lot of co-chairs at the future meeting, so it will be a little bit easier to get the ball rolling. Certainly, we have quite a nice set of topics, and I'm thinking, Hillary, maybe some of these can also be intrinsically connected to some of the work that RDA is doing for itself in terms of communication. So interesting use cases.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because there's a lot of disciplinary work in that you're doing at the moment for RDA, and we could see there how I was thinking that before. But well done, Timea. It's not easy. And as you said at some point during the meeting, if we were in a room, or Leslie did, rightly so, if we were in a room, it would be much easier. So, and thanks, Leslie, for intervening. It's always hard when you can't see the faces or the names in the list, but it's been really interesting. So.